Karibu. Yeah. And we're now in session. And we want to say thank you for making the time. Of course, 2 minutes after the top of the hour, we have a very interesting conversation for us to actually have tonight on this particular forum. It is the Summit O'Clock. If you're joining us for the very first time, seeing me for the first time, we always here every Wednesday, 9 p.m. And of course, the aim is for us to scale the heights, give you all the kind of conversations that matter to you and I, especially when it comes to our country here in Rwanda, and of course, crossing borders across the region and particularly the entire continent. Tonight on the program, we put on the ballast one of the most important conversations that we've been having across different spheres, and of course it is in line with the safety measures that are being taken place, the crackdown, for those who actually like to call it that way, within the faith-based organizations. We want just to make sense of these particular guidelines that are actually being made right here. So if you have been on our social media platforms, you've already been able to see the panelists that we're going to be having on the program. I'll be introducing them and being able to understand them even better. But we are live across different platforms, including the YouTube channel. We are actually right there. In case you go onto the YouTube channel, you'll be able to find us right there, like you can see. Please jump onto this particular channel right about now. Go onto the comment section. I'll be reading your feedback in the course of this particular program. And of course, my name as always is Eugene Anangwe. If you want to be interactive with us, use the hashtag #TheSummitRW on the X platform. Now, let's just put this topic into perspective. We understand that there's actually a law that is governing the faith-based organizations, and of course there are actually different requirements for those who are actually supposed to be able to set up these faith-based organizations. And it is a conversation that you can actually go onto the Rwanda Governance Board's website. You'll be able to find them there. We have the CEO here. She'll be able to tell us if there are any changes that have been made on this. But what I understand is that you need an application letter addressed to the Chief Executive Officer of RGB, and of course those requirements are right there, including a brief notarized document explaining the doctrine of the organization, and of course notarized minutes of the General Assembly that established the organization, approved its statutes, and appointed members of the organs of this particular organization. An annual action plan of the organization with its source of budget, a document of partnership issued by one of the umbrellas of own choice, and of course proof of payment of non-refundable fees of 100,000 Rwandan francs. There's a lot right there in terms of what you need to be able to understand. But this is not happening right here in Rwanda alone. Also in countries like Kenya, there are actually conversations around regulating the faith-based space, and of course we'll be able to just touch base on that as well, including heavy fines, including declaration of the sources of income and all that. So let me just bring in our panelists for us to be able to make more sense of this particular conversation. Like I mentioned, we have Dr. Eusta Kaitesi, the Chief Executive Officer, Rwanda Governance Board. It's not been an easy week for you, not so many good words from some quarters, but also others also praising you in equal measure. Thank you for making time on the program.
Thank you.
Also joining us today for the very first time, it's been a long time coming, Reverend Dr. Laurent Mada, Archbishop, Anglican Church of Rwanda. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
Asante sana for being with us. And also joining us is Pastor Kawagambe Nziza Julius. Thank you also for making time. We've been with you in other kind of forums in terms of the shows that we've had right here on Rwanda Television. It's the first time being here on the summit. I want to say thank you for making time. I want to start off with you, Dr. Eusta. What's informing this, for lack of a better word, most people are calling it crackdown. What is informing this? Because the law regulating the faith-based organizations is not a new one.
Yes.
Regulations have been there for quite some time. And most would be asking, what is informing this? Why? What's the rush? What is going on? Maybe you can explain to us.
Well, I think the bigger question is what informs its absence.
Okay, yes.
Initially, we are a regulator, and regulators do this every other time. So we have had a law since 2018, as you said.
Correct.
And over the time, religious organizations, faith-based organizations have had to comply with the law. The last element of complying was the education requirement. So when the law was voted in 2018, there was given a grace period in terms of the required education. The members of the Interreligious Council requested that they be given 5 years from the promulgation of the law to allow the levels that require education to be filled with those that have education. So over the years, we've been really doing monitoring. This particular time, we saw a few things.
Yeah.
A few things include the mushrooming of those that are illegal, actually. So that's a reality in itself.
Yeah.
A few more things include noise pollution. Even when the standards of noise pollution exist within legal instruments,
Yeah.
the irregularity came up. But it was time also, I think Dr. Mbanda will remember that last year, in December, we met with them. We spoke about the role of faith-based organizations in national transformation.
Yes.
We showed them what the Vision 2050 expects, and we also requested them, because we said by September, that was when the grace period ended.
Yeah.
Could you go back into your denominations and tell us how you stand? In March, we wrote, in May, we wrote to them again and said, please share with us the status
update
of your organization. So this monitoring phase has really been part of the process. In May, we started a mapping program for them and for the NGOs, not just for FBOs, for the NGOs also. And so that is the perspective in which this monitoring comes.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question is, why would we find this much of irregularity when there has been this law that people have been really trying to comply over the years? And maybe that's part of the discussion that we'll move on.
We're going to build up on that. And I want to bring in Reverend Dr. Lauren Mbanda. You are on record having said, and probably you might correct this statement, probably you're misquoted, but it's good for you to set the record straight. You said churches knew what to do. But over time, something seemed to have gone wrong. It's not that this is catching the faith-based organization by surprise. But as the CEO is saying, this number is very huge, over 5,600 that have not complied over this particular period. What is, first of all, your reaction to this? Are you also caught by surprise, or what do you say about this whole program?
No, first of all, there is nothing to correct. What I said is what I believe that happened. There is nothing to correct. But I strongly believe it was not a surprise to me. I may have relaxed, and many others may have relaxed, but it was not a surprise to me. I became an archbishop in 2018.
Yes. When this law was actually coming in.
And I knew it was there.
Yes.
It was actually at that moment that I was intentionally trying to start a school that will address those issues. And I started the theological school to address the issues of education, because it was becoming expensive for us to send them outside of Kenya or Uganda or other places.
Yes.
So that was there. We knew we had 5 years. We also knew that last year, September, was the deadline, really, was the time that it had come up. In fact, I can't put anybody on the spot, but at that time, I sat in my office with my team and we started mapping and identifying who has the degree, who doesn't have, and which parish should have a person, and which person should go to which parish. Yeah. We did that as a mapping process.
So it's not by surprise. Yes.
Internally. So it was not by surprise, and I was aware of that. Also, the standards. The standards came up in 2018. I think we did something in 2019. I think that there was actually some survey of churches. Some were closed even that time.
Yes.
And so the reason I said that we relaxed is because had we actually taken it a little bit more serious, I included. I'm not being excluded.
So you're taking responsibility.
Taking responsibility. We would have probably slowly improved, not gone back, but rather improved. And even the new that we are starting did something. Whether it was COVID, whatever may have happened, at least let me put it to myself.
Yes.
We relaxed.
Right.
Should I have monitored everything And
would not be seeing these numbers.
We would not be seeing these numbers. I wouldn't be seeing those numbers in my own diocese and in the Anglican Church as a whole. So we have to take responsibility.
Right.
The other thing is that we are seeing that has grown, that probably, as she said, is the mushrooming, is also the number of being clever.
Cheeky.
Maybe being clever and trying to figure out how can I cope with this situation. Do I adjust myself to this particular church? Do I use this facility? And knowing that that was not there before, what made me go back? In other words, we went backwards. We didn't go forwards. And that should have been the intention, to improve. So among people who should apologize, I should apologize. And we did our best. But also, there is this whole issue of false teaching.
False teaching. We'll come to that. Let's first set the ground with that opening conversation. Then we now go deeper into the false teaching, the prosperity gospel that some people are actually saying. Let me bring in.
But I believe we should take responsibility. It shouldn't have been a surprise. Yeah. We were reminded at certain stages. Maybe we didn't take it serious, but we saw it coming.
You saw it coming.
And we didn't know when, especially the education one. We saw it coming.
Right.
In terms of standards, that was almost like a done deal, except that we didn't.
We'll come to that and say, do we need a carrot or a stick? Because sometimes when you fail, you get a stick for it.
We are getting it.
You're getting it. Pastor Nziza, Julius, I mean, talk to me about your own perspective in terms of these requirements, in terms of the whole exercise. What are the pros and cons in terms of the handling of this whole exercise that will be able to say that CEO, I think here you're handling it well, or CEO, I think, here we can handle it in this particular way. Are you comfortable? Are you satisfied as a pastor yourself?
First of all, I am a casualty of this program since 2018. And that's how I joined New Life Bible Church when our church was closed. Now, I will not have much problem with the standards and settings.
Yes.
But I have a problem with the implementation side of it. Even Kigali itself, people are living in Kigali, all of us who live in Kigali, we don't stay in the same standard of living. We have different lives. So it becomes then a challenge when you set a standard to a church in Kigali and the same standard faces a church at Kajera.
What would you expect?
I'm coming there.
Yes.
For instance, in Kigali, I'm just give the general view.
Yes.
Maybe you go into detail.
Yes.
In Kigali, there is a church maybe that is in the with neighbors and all that. So in one or another, they need to put soundproof. At Kajera Park, there is a church from the mountain. There is no home there, and people are coming to that church. They don't have a car. They don't even have a motorbike. And I can give you examples today. Churches are closed because of soundproof. Akajera down there. Closing because of parking. You are telling them for parking and all that. They don't even have a bicycle, some of them. Okay, let's say they have a bicycle, motorbike. But these people need their soundproof according to where they are. So I think that's one. So generally, the standards of the church, the requirements should be good, but we also need to balance to where and to when.
Yeah.
That's one. Two, on the issue of education, to the pastors, I'm lucky enough, I started ministry when I was not trained. I know to serve when you're not trained, and I know to serve when I'm trained because I have the two. I'm lucky enough I have the two. I got a chance to go to school. I did my bachelor degree in theology. I have a diploma in theology. I have certificates in theology. But I know the two, so it's good. But the way we are handling it, to me, I think so need to set a team for training first. Because transformation does not take in one day.
But you had 5 years. 5 years.
Of course, 5 years, yes. But you are saying you take 5 years, and you are teaching things that have been there for over 30 years. So
you need more time.
Yeah, you need more time. That's what I'm trying to say. It's need more time. And again, I'm sorry, he's my father in terms of age, but our forefathers, in terms of those who brought here the evangelism and the missions, the missionaries, somehow, somewhere, they never gave us the truth at the beginning. Because you realize in those years, the missionaries, they came in, they preached the gospel, and they trained our forefathers that you can preach without trainings. So those things became part of life, that all those who join the ministry, you can be there even if you're not trained.
And you say this is a calling.
And this is a calling. So now those things the people have been with that mind and doctrine for years and years, it is not that you can just take it one day. It needs time.
Right.
So to me, that's where
I hear you. And I want to start off with giving CEO a chance to actually just respond to those two items that you mentioned.
Yes.
The aspect of one size fits all in terms of the soundproof, the regulations, and then also the time. Is there any response you'd give to him and any other that has the same question?
Well, I think our law is quite one of the most lenient laws. Why? On the element of soundproof, I think a lot of people say the wrong thing. We are supposed to say noise pollution instead of saying soundproof. Soundproof is one of the mechanisms of managing noise pollution. Now, even not in the countryside, even here in the city, some congregations don't use a lot of noise in their worship. So I don't imagine going into one congregation that doesn't use a lot of worship, a lot of drums, and all I want is soundproof. But I want to verify that the noise pollution is at the level that is required. So maybe that has been an operation, Ella, where people have been looking for the equipment instead of looking for the standard. And the standard and the law also on the second level, the law states that when it comes to prayer houses, the construction of a prayer houses is based on this on the building code of the area in which the house is. So the building code of somewhere in Akagera is entirely different from the building code in Kigali.
Yes.
Because it also depends on the master plans and other many factors. So that would be an operation error if somebody looked at how the
parking.
And when I will go to parking though, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding on that. We should use the word accessibility because while I agree that in some congregations, based on the area, they do not have transport that includes cars and all of that. You don't want people up to 100, 40, 50, 60 go to an inaccessible place. We've had an experience in this country. A few years ago, lightning hit one of the churches in the south, and 7 people, I think almost 7 people died. I don't remember well, but more than 7 people died or got injured. In that circumstances, you need to be able to get there an ambulance as fast as possible. You need to get there a car that is going to help you evacuate people in one way. So I think people should look at it from a security perspective and go beyond the fact that you think the pastors are going to be parking cars. It's more about cleanliness and accessibility in reality. Where many people are going to be congregated, you need to be able to access them. That's why you need to have lightning
arresters.
Arresters. You need, in the first place, we are thinking about the security of the people that are at the prayer house, and then accessibility. I see a lot of women with their kids going to church. Just imagine on the noise pollution. Which future do you want for this child? Because people speak about soundproof, and they forget that noise pollution also affects those who are inside. When you look at our noise pollution standards that have been established, there is a standard for what you measure inside the house. I mean, inside the prayer house
and outside
the prayer house. So I think that perspective is what we all need to understand better. either at both at an operational level and at the leadership, at the faith leadership level, to really understand the intention. People, when you read the operation without the intention, you lose the purpose. But the purpose for this is to dignify those congregations. And one of those is let it be accessible. In case of anything, you need to be able to evacuate people, you need to be able to access them, and hopefully they are praying to get rich as well. And so they will have the cars and the motorcycles, because we want to be zero poverty as well. So we should be thinking for where we are going more than where we are. Where
we are coming from. We'll come back to build up on that, but the question on time, I want to bring it to Dr. Archbishop. I want to understand from what he says, how do you marry the preachings and the understanding that we've had about the gospel? Because the Bible says also that Jesus went to the wilderness to actually pray. And most of these prayers, we see people say, I'm going to the mountain to seek God and to be able to pray. And this is what Pastor Julius is saying, that has been the belief over time, that we need those places. And CEO is saying, those places might be inaccessible for us to get you. Because even by nature of those places, it's far away and people have gone all over. How do you marry that with the modern way and the ways of this new implementation of this regulation?
First of all, I'm glad that we are mentioning that.
Yes.
But those people were walking barefooted.
They're walking barefooted.
Now we are walking with shoes.
So we're even more safer now.
We are more safer now.
With shoes on.
But also, those people didn't have the cell phones we have today. So I don't think we should live in the past. We should live in the present. I also believe that maybe this thing, we have gone into it with a lot of emotions. I will give you an example. Today I was talking I had a group of pastors. So I asked him, he said, what message should we be giving to our church members if they think the government is against all this? So I said, you are a pastor. And I said, help me also, what message should I be giving to your congregation? And he explained it. And I said, so why do you ask me, why can't we explain that? I think sometimes we are not taking the time. We get information, passing on information. Sometimes there is a gap. And so what I know, is it what my pastors know? What the pastors know, is it what the congregation know? Information is power. When we don't pass it on,
in the right way.
Yes, in the right way. I think it affects us. And I think sometimes that is what happened. Let me come back to the education issue. I don't think that I'm expecting all the pastors of the Anglican Church to have a degree. It will be almost, and if it is going to be, it's going to take time. But I think the law is not saying every pastor should have a degree. I think the law is saying the leadership. And so, will we have all the leadership in 5 years? Maybe not. But I think that is the intention, that is the goal. And maybe rather than having 50 parishes, maybe I should have 30 at that time. Maybe I should keep some parishes. Maybe I should grow as also the opportunity unfolds for me. But let me address the issue then that you just raised, that Jesus,
the wilderness.
Out there in the wilderness. But he also went into the synagogues. And we are not saying you cannot hold an open campaign out here. We are not saying you cannot meet Christians out there and have an open evangelistic. We do those. We ask permission for them, and we do them. I don't think the government has come and said, no, you don't do that. I've heard many. So I think we need to look at it from the perspective of where are we going as human beings? Where are we going as a country?
What's the vision?
What is the vision? And then operate from a vision rather than saying emotion. Or rather than saying, I will stay where I've been. That is where my grandfathers were. That is the education I got. I think as we improve, as we ourselves develop and improve, we should also bring that knowledge into the church and helping the church. I don't think that I don't think that, we see people going to the caves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's where we find a God. Do we want a quiet time? Can there be a room somewhere?
So it's not a must to go in the cave?
It's not a must to go in the cave. It's not a must to go in the cave. In fact, going to the cave or going on the top of the tree or going on top of the hill may be more dangerous for those people than just finding a quiet room and praying with your friends in your house or something like that. That's not necessarily a place of worship, I agree with that. But I think we also needed to look at the lives of people. Now, I come from an Anglican church, so coming from an Anglican church, I'm not going to go in the place where I confirm and I cannot have access to the parish. That's one of our policies. Now, if we have had that policy from the time we got the bishops, 1965 with the first bishop, well, one of the requirements to be a parish is that you have to have access to the parish.
Yes, yes.
Is also that you have to have at least a personage, a house for the pastor.
Yes.
Not that we have all those in place, but I think what we are talking is access. And I think what we are talking, this nice room has soundproof.
Yes, yes, yes.
If you are requiring me to do this in my parish, I will fail totally. But I don't think that's what is being required. So I think as leaders also, we needed to force ourselves to understand more in order to be able to pass on
the message in the right way.
But
Julius, yes.
I wanted to chip in into that for two things.
Yes.
What the Archbishop said, there should be an intentional willingness for compliance. The level of noise for a congregation depends on the managers of noise. You can choose to lower the level of your noise without even using a lot of instruments. And you do practice your faith without being noiseful, I would say that. And the level of structure, that's also what I wanted to mention. When we register religious or faith-based organizations, we ask them to submit to us their structure. The education requirement is only to the level of a structure, an organizational structure that supervises other structures. I'll just share an example, a reform that we did with one of the churches. They used to have 420-something parishes. And when we were reforming them, we told them, we will not wait until 2023 for you to have the education requirement. You are at issue, and the best way is for you to move into the direction of the law. And we told them, go back. You can give us as many parishes as you want, as long as the head pastor of the parish pastor has a degree. And you know what? They came back with 143 parishes. Just by structure, they decided, no, it wasn't cast in stone for them to have 420 parishes. It was only just because somebody had designed it.
Yes.
And they adjusted and got to 143 to get at least university degrees for that. So I think faith leaders should also understand that this law gives them a lot of space to sometimes even deal with some historical things that they haven't designed. And if they are willing to re-engineer themselves, restructure themselves, they'll probably have bigger prayer houses in neighborhoods than have smaller non-qualifying prayer houses in different places.
Yeah. Is your job the most difficult one? Because right now there are those who probably argue that you are against the churches, you're against God. Why are you not shutting down or putting the same energy in clubs where they feel that's where the sin is happening, but you're now attacking where actually people are seeking God and actually trying to seek God in the best way they can, led by the Spirit. Sometimes they start speaking in tongues and they can't control the volume, the way they speak. How do you marry this argument?
No, my job is not the toughest because this is a joint job. You know, we are working with the religious sector. We are working with all all the other institutions. Yeah. But this is a law-binding country. We've decided to be a country governed by the rule of law. It's just the same way. If you're driving and you get by the traffic lights and you stop in the middle of the night, it's being compliant. I think it's also part of faith teaching to be compliant, actually. That's what faith is about in the general sense. And I don't like the comparison with clubs. I know clubs get people, but the level of congregation in clubs and the cost of it sometimes is not equivalent. A lot of the churches we are talking about, of the prayer houses we are talking about, so think of the mosque. You go there 5 times a day. You don't go to a club 5 times a day. You probably spend more time than you spend in the mosque, but to make it thorough, the same standards that apply, for example, in noise pollution, is equal. When we released the noise pollution guidelines,
guided by REMA,
yes. by the Minister of Environment,
yes.
It has all the sections. It has all the sections of everyone, including industries. So everyone should look at what their responsibility is. So I should say, I am doing my duty at this level. Somebody else is supposed to be doing their duty with regard to the bars and clubs, and I know they are doing. Just a few months, you remember when there was this big fight on what time the clubs should be closing.
Correct.
I think sometimes people just listen when it affects them. But I am sure if somebody who owns a club was seated here, they would do the lamentations of why did we have to close this time? I've had this and this and this. So I think really people should listen to that. All of that is engineered to the kind of environment we want to give ourselves as Rwandans, to the kind of safety we want to do, whether you are in the bar, whether you are in the club, and whether you are in the church. I think really there's no exception. And it shouldn't be that because Anangwe is wrong, then my wrongness is justified. It's not a justification. It's not a balance of wrongness. There is a standard of what you need to do that is right. You do not, integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. It is really a test of our integrity, all of us, in terms of compliance.
Right.
But it's also what I want
May I allow him, Archbishop? He feels bored now. Let's bring him in a bit. You wanted to chip in.
Yeah, I first of all, I think there's let me go back to what you said many times. And to me, I think maybe the interpretation of it, we need to go in deep and understand what is there when we mean it. When we say noise pollution, especially, what do we mean by noise pollution? What is noise itself as noise pollution? And then when we go into it, then we need to understand, is it a noise when people are worshiping God? Because according maybe to my little knowledge about English and pollution, noise pollution, it's a various sound of noise that make no sense.
No.
So, which means there's noise, but nothing, those sounds, that's why you call noise pollution. So when you call noise pollution, I think then we are trying to dilute the real action of worshiping God. Worshiping God is not noise pollution. That's maybe there is an issue of, we can look for another word term, first of all, on that, to understand that. That's one. Two, I'm happy that you said that somehow if this happens outside in the city, closing the church, there's a problem. I remember I was here in 2015 with some leaders, and we on the same issues like this. I'm sorry to say, CEO, you are sending people to the ground to implement the law, yet themselves they don't know what is the law. So they are just taking words and they are just implementing things without the carefulness or looking the standards and measuring it. So I think we need that training, we as church leaders. But also the people who are sending the ground,
also need training.
They need that training to have full information. Because, wait a bit. Because when you look at this, they are coming. This is what you need. Do you have? Is the compound
parking
pavets or soundproof? So they don't have, because I listened very keenly. You said we just need the way out. If this church
emergency entry,
so that means is it accessible? Then that is different with having a big compound and well paved and all that. So that means you also need to train your people.
I think the
by
point
the
is
time.
home. The point is home.
Well,
CEO
I think
yeah.
it's a shared responsibility. In the first place, if we all did our responsibility right, we wouldn't have this mass thing.
Yeah.
For the prayer house to exist, when it doesn't qualify, it's a collective responsibility. It's not supposed to be there. The pastor is not supposed to open it. And the local leader and myself are not supposed to allow it to happen.
Yes.
Now, that's why we are discussing about it. Somehow somebody didn't do their responsibility right, and we are in this situation. But I want to go back to the definition of noise pollution.
Correct.
It's exactly the same you're expressing. If you go in an industry, you must make an effort to understand the industry. Noise pollution, I should say Rwanda is a secular state. So we do not define how you do your faith. I think he read that we require you to submit a statement of faith. And we require you to submit
the doctrine.
Your doctrine. And because of that, we don't interfere on how you do that. But noise pollution is not the words that are in what you're saying. It's the level at which you're saying it. And we have laws. We have a law on noise pollution. It defines what noise pollution. When you're talking to God and nobody else is allowed to sleep, that could be what your faith believes, but Rwanda still believes that you could do that. You are only required to do, in that case then you are supposed to do soundproof, such that it is you and God and your colleagues that are listening to one another.
But he said
otherwise
they feel offended because they are serving God, they are praying to God, they are calling out on God, and you're calling that noise pollution. And he feels it needs a different name other than just noise pollution because he feels it's not an easy word on what they are doing because of the value
this
of
is not, that's what I was saying. This is not a regulation for just the faith sector. Our laws, and I think people should understand, laws have very particular mandates. They are quite not individualistic in nature. Noise pollution, if you look at the guidelines that exist on noise pollution in this country, and there is a law also that speaks about noise pollution, it goes into categories. It goes into levels of buildings. It goes into sectors, you know. And somebody who has an industry, there is a place where the industry should be. There is a level of noise exposure at a given level. I think you've heard so many times, children of a given age cannot work in an industry because of the noise level. So I think noise is not content. The words you're using, you're pushing me to want to understand that when content is about God,
it should
irrespective of the level of the voice.
Excuse you, I'm not saying it's supposed to be allowed, but I don't want on myself to lose the meaning of worship in terms of the noise. I understand that and agree that the churches and all the houses, they're supposed to have levels so that maybe what I feel comfortable with, maybe my brother, my sister is not. So I don't want also to interfere with his life.
Their freedoms as well.
His freedom. He or she needs to have his freedom. But what I was trying to say, first of all, is the definition of this word, because to me, it does not sound correct. Allow me to add something.
Maybe at a point, there's a point you mentioned that I want us to exhaust completely.
Yes.
And that is the training of those who come to enforce on ground. And probably that's you can be able to help us here, because even when the noise pollution debate started for the nightclubs and all that, there was always an argument that this police has just come and they have shut down our business, yet we are not making noise. What are they using to determine whether we are breaking the law or not breaking the law? And that's why there were gadgets that are allowed to be able to test the decibels. How loud is this and how not loud is this? When these enforcers come on ground at a church, do they come with that? And what should pastors ask them before a decision is made that your church is actually making noise and needs to be closed down? What should they also know for their right to also?
I think what you're bringing at point is when we did those noise pollution standards, actually, we had an assessment. We went around churches on Sundays. We assessed inside
and outside.
We assessed outside. It's very interesting. I will not say denominations, but there are certain denominations that it was very normal, without requirement, without really having been informed, without noise, without sound system.
Yes.
It was quite normal. And then there are other denominations that it was quite loud. I'll use the word. You know, it was quite loud. And that's how they practice it. We haven't said as a government that you can't say it that way. But we've said that when it goes to that level, it is your responsibility
to now protect the others.
Protect the others. That's why initially, before it's a government responsibility to come and test whether your noise level is right, it is your duty to have that level. You know, we are speaking about the crackdown as the normal thing. The normal thing is, as a Rwandan who has the responsibility to operate but respect the rights of others, you have initially a responsibility to have those standards. You said it. Now the progress we've had, at least from 2018, is that we have those standards. It's known that you have to be at 45 when you are inside, at 80-something when you are outside. At these hours, this is the amount of noise you can have. So I do understand that he passionately thinks worship can't be noise, but it has an impact. You know, it has an exposure. It has an effect on life. You know, there are so many worshippers, when they are seated there worshiping, they are wearing some noise pollution. I mean, they are protecting their ears because of the noise. And that's even in church. It happens. So I think some of these things are just more scientific than spiritual. They are more realistic than spiritual. The level of worship and preaching is about listening and hearing. When it goes to the level that it affects others, really, I think it has a limitation. So what I'm trying to say is, it is true at different levels, and that discussion has been amongst us who are implementing. If I go and the church is somewhere in between, or their design of worship doesn't make any noise, then I don't look for equipment. Then I don't assume that neighbors will be distracted when the neighbors are not anywhere close. And that discussion is there too, for both government and for the faith-based organizations. You know, we are partners anyway. That's what I said at the beginning. The fact that we are having houses of prayer that do not meet the standards in our own villages, in our own communities,
it should worry us.
It is a shared responsibility, and we should all be worried about that. And you know what? If you live in this suburb and your prayer house is on the other side, when you are at home resting, you were in an overnight, and the neighboring church is making noise, we have had religious leaders call us because their neighbors can't let them sleep. So it's not, don't think that they all enjoy the noise or they all are okay about the noise. When they are home sleeping, they don't want the noise in their neighborhood. But when they are at church praying, sometimes they don't care.
Right. I want to read a comment, and then I'll come to hear Archbishop. Mugabe on X is asking, did the government or regulator inform those church leaders beforehand, or did they just surprise them? I think this is a very interesting question. Archbishop mentioned it's not by surprise, but was there any, maybe just for clarity purposes?
One thing should be clear, though. The rule of law is not an event. So you don't want people to be compliant to law because there is an event. Now, that put in perspective, though, the Archbishop mentioned, I also mentioned how many times we've met with the church leaders, reminding them of their responsibilities, telling them about the standards. Even just recently in May, we wrote to the umbrellas, we wrote to the churches, and asked them, to all the faith-based organizations, and asked them, please share with us where your
progress report,
where you are in terms of training, in terms of facilities, in terms, of course, not many of them did that, unfortunately. So I don't want the discussion to tell us as a regulator
that we
need to tell them, get ready for the law, then we are coming to verify the law. This country has a very good approach, which is a partnership approach. But it should not make people think that the authority of the law is a negotiable thing. And I think that's what goes wrong. Sometimes when you negotiate a lot of times, because you want to find consensus, people think there is an absence of law. First of all, the duty bearers should understand that there is an obligation on them Before then, you think, oh, I wasn't informed, so that I should put so that I should build
soundproofing,
all of that. You were supposed to have it in the first place. Yeah.
Right. Archbishop.
It's very interesting. Is it what you expect or what you inspect?
That's an interesting twist. What do you think? Tell us.
I think if I'm a responsible person, I deliver. Whether you inspect or you don't inspect. That is the responsibility now. It is good to inspect in order to keep me in the check. But let's go back here. I think one, on terminologies, I don't know if we should be arguing on the terminologies. I think we should all maybe try to understand and sometimes force ourselves to understand what that means. Otherwise, if we go back terminologies is going to be difficult because there is even some that in the village down there I may not be able to explain.
Get it and understand,
except to say, when you start seeing people doing like this, it's too much for some. So I think we need. I think we are bringing into being too emotional on this. On the issue of being warned, I think we have been warned, and even before this came, I think I got a call on the 28th of this month. This is happening. Inform your people.
Yes.
I was outside. I happened to be with the people that I was with, and I informed them. And I think they tried to reach. There is also a letter that followed that. To the maybe not all of us shared it, but there was a letter that came from that. In fact, I think it was a warning. We were aware. So those people are coming. There is another thing I think sometimes that we shy away from. I think we also should, when we know and people are coming, we should also be bold enough to ask a question. It's a relationship. It's a partnership. So if I ask a question, you are asking me this, but this is what is expected, and here I delivered.
So you also have to have knowledge.
Oh yes. So he says, no, you have to have this. I say, sir, that's not a part of this. But if, for example, someone came and said, you are in the city, you have this beautiful church, it would be good if you had cameras. He didn't say, where are the cameras? Now, the next day someone comes to me and said, they required us
to have a camera.
To have cameras. It was a suggestion. It was an idea that which will serve
security purposes.
For security purposes. Where, if we have funds, why not buy the cameras and put them in place? There is also another misunderstanding that I think, and sometimes we give ourselves too much actually when we have given this. There is sometimes we say greenery, rather than doing a pave or whatever, this pave, sometimes we are being asked if there can be garden, things like that, that's fair. But I think we blanket it that it has all, that's where I agree with him, that we need sometimes those categorization. I think sometimes we say, oh, we have to have a pave, if we don't have this pave, everything is falling apart. So we don't have to force ourselves to understand and to engage. I think if it is a partnership, we need to engage.
There has to be room for engagement.
There is room for engagement. And if we don't understand each other, there is a level of submission somewhere.
So
but that is also quite interesting because every religious organization that comes, you read the conditions, they have to have a collaboration letter with their local government. So that is where the design starts from. What goes wrong with the collaboration letter to the level that we are not standard-based? So I wanted to just add on that partnership level. When it gets to the point that we behave like we are not on the same side of the of what we are doing, something has gone wrong in our operations because we have a collaboration letter and we are partners beyond worship, beyond fellowship.
So what you're saying, CEO, is, if let's say today they came to Pastor Julius's church, he is able to actually discuss with the enforcers who have come on ground and be able to say, look, you're saying I've made noise. Where is the gadget you're using to prove that I went beyond that. Is this what you're saying? Maybe room for negotiation, just for clarity purposes?
Room for discussion,
yes,
and for understanding.
Yes.
And I should say that that's also not the end of it, because we are working as a team.
Yes.
If somebody misunderstands, just like he thought worship can't be noise, that's normal. Somebody will think,
I'm under attack.
Yeah, somebody would just think, even a government official will come and think, I only need pave made in cement and all of this. That's an understanding. And in operations, such errors happen. But we have a structure. We've been doing this assessment. When every time we do an assessment, we come back and look at what we got from the assessment.
Yeah.
The stage at which we are, people are looking at the analysis.
Yeah.
So why did we close this? Why did we not close this? How did we understand this? Because it's also a learning experience for all of us to say, oh, what does it mean? What is the reality? How is the reality? How do we customize actually these realities? So there is room for negotiation, but also there is room for interpretation. Absolutely. You know, in my legal background, people live on that, live on interpreting.
This was misinterpreted, and we get off the hook.
People have a whole life because they are interpreting the law. So, times of we understand what we want. We all understand that we believe in the right to worship. We believe in the right of choice of worship. We have legally designed the standards of infrastructures for worship. And if you go out of the standards, there is also a design. But just because there is two ways of implementation error, for me as a religious leader, as a faith-based organization leader, I have committed operation errors when I start doing my worship and my prayers in an unacceptable place. Similarly, the executive who is supposed to be monitoring and enforcing at times commits errors. It's a first error that exists in the first place. That doesn't qualify exists. But it also could be an error when you do. Just imagine.
Maybe they just have issues with this person.
We are doing assessment in almost 2 weeks now. What we see in 2 weeks is unacceptable for all of us. For all of us in the faith sector, for all of us in the government sector. And I think that's the common ground.
Right.
Is this befitting of the Rwandans who go to fellowship? Why do we accept the standards that do not befit?
I'm being told we have only 2 minutes to go. Usually it's the shortest one now. I think we need more time. Hello? Give us more time.
I just asked to go where?
I know. Let me just quickly read the feedback, because this show, I said, is very interactive. I have very many people who are actually talking to us. One of them is Leonidas, who says, I think requirements to be fulfilled by churches in urban should be different for the churches of rural. This is what he says. John Damasen and Nyandwi says, those people closing churches in RGB and setting up guidelines about church requirements and what has to be taught in churches, do they also have relevant degrees in theology of various denominations, so that you also understand what you're closing out, you're not shutting?
We do not close teaching, but their teachings must comply to the laws. You cannot compromise national unity, you cannot compromise public order. So there are constitutional requirements that you can't do. And that's what we do generally. But I think the faith sector also, and that's why we have in this law a requirement that you bring a recommendation letter from an umbrella of your choice. The umbrellas, he reads the peace plan, he reads the Rwanda Interreligious Council, those are forums and umbrellas. If somebody applies to go to the peace plan, they look at their statement of faith, whether it is sober and sane, and then they admit them. That is a self-regulatory mechanism that we actually put, because we don't have the expertise. The best expertise is for them to do
to give
self-regulation. If we do it better, then we are even safer. We are able to manage the toxic teachings that are
coming up. Stephen Asimo says, noise pollution is a generic term for sound levels. It doesn't imply music being played isn't good or valuable music. I think he's responding to your point. Ducine says, it is a collective responsibility. Check if these churches respect test decibels and respect standards of opening a church, plus follow up on what is going on in churches. Example in Kenya, corpses were found Shakahola. I think for those who've read the story of Shakahola, where people were actually murdered in that particular way. And then Ngubito says, this one is a very long one. I might not be able to read it at this point. Stephen Asimo says, he who blesses his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it will be counted a curse to him. Is this correct doctrine? He mentioned this Proverbs chapter 27, verse 14.
Out of context.
Out of context, maybe. Thank you. Maybe just in closing, just under half a minute, where do we go from here? What do we do? Real quick, we're going.
My recommendation, first of all, when RGB is sitting down to come together with these regulations about the church, I think there's something missing. They are doing it out of the church knowledge. They need, the way I say out of the church knowledge, they need somebody who has expert in this.
She says it's a law. They're not doing what they want.
The law, when they are creating this law, to have knowledge how the church operates. Because somehow I think there's something they misquote about the church.
Maybe,
Pastor, we had the Rwanda Interreligious Council in Parliament Commission when we were discussing this law.
I'm speaking from the Pentecostal church point of view. These are churches who are not...
We need to go, Pastor, but the point she says it's something we can continue.
The representative was from Fobacol. From Fobacol.
So again...
again, we have no time. That's the problem. But we could add that. Maybe Archbishop.
Yes.
In closing, maybe just where do we go from here now?
I think where we go from here is we go back to our homes. We go back to our congregations. We sit with our pastors. We analyze our own situation. We assess. And then we mobilize to meet those standards. And we help one another, first of all. And that process has already started, as I mentioned. And the other thing, I think we need to help each other understand. There is a level of misunderstanding. We are missing each other in our communication and discussions. So we need to do that. And who are better suited to do that is the church leaders who sit together, who understand. And try not to be emotionally, I think we are too emotional.
We put our emotions aside, focus on the bigger goal.
Exactly, and start asking ourselves hard questions. Hard questions.
Thank you. CEO.
Well, I think the church we want and the religious sector we want is one that is taking us to Vision 2050. Because I think heaven is further than Vision 2050. We need to have a faith sector that is competent to deliver us on Vision 2050 and then deliver us to heaven. Otherwise, the development of Rwanda is a critical obligation that we all have, irrespective of the faith that we have.
Right. Is there room for this 5,600 to reopen?
I think that part of the work we are doing now is an analysis. Not all of them will reopen, certainly. Because if somebody is in caves, if somebody is in a place where that is prone to disaster,
they might not
open. There are some of those that didn't even have the legal right to operate in this country. Those ones are not viable to opening. So the analysis will determine how many of those are going to be able to open, depending on the issues that have been raised.
Archbishop has said, we go home. Let us go. Let us go. Let us go. Let us go. Thank you very much for being part of this particular program. We want to say Asante Sana. The conversation ends in these 4 walls, but it continues across different social platforms. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you.
So usually we go back now.